Welcome back to the classroom. And class is in session. Welcome back to the show, guys. And today we have a really interesting talk. We're going to talk about the intuition. I get a lot of questions on the intuition from patients in an attempt to help crystallize a concept that we're all familiar with. I'm sure we all heard about intuition before, but it's a difficult concept to sort of crystallize and to put into black and white. So I put a lot of thought into today's lecture, and today we're going to talk about the intuition. By the end of today's lecture, we're going to talk about essentially what the intuition is, at least my concept of it, because again, it's such a nebulous concept. So what my idea of what the intuition is, we're going to talk about in today's lecture as well, practical ways in which our intuition presents in everyday life. Because I like to always relate these rather difficult, hard to understand concepts to practical ways. And then finally, we're also going to talk about at least one technique that we can use to help develop our own intuition. So to start off with, exactly what is it? And to me, our mind we have multiple layers in our mind. We have the conscious mind, and we have the subconscious. And at least to me, that wonderful sort of in between is where our intuition lies. And essentially what it boils down to is that our conscious mind, the part of our mind that we use to think and collect data and we can control, and the subconscious mind, that processing power that lies beneath it that we can't really control, it's an amalgamation of these two. So the conscious mind collects data, and the subconscious mind processes that data. And then from that data processing, through these two things, our intuition is born. You see, because what this means in a sort of, again, practical everyday life is that we are able to pick up patterns, habits, behaviors through our lifetime of experiences that there's no way we can remember or recall using our conscious mind. But at the same time, our subconscious mind is this powerful computer that we can use to be able to process and crunch data and store these long-term habits and behaviors and patterns that we can observe. And so the amalgamation of these two aspects of our mind is where the intuition lies. Truthfully, I could even take it one step further and even add an element of spirit to it. And I'll use this opportunity to broach this topic simply because there are people that came to me as patients to talk about intuition, and they would say, "But doc, I was never ever in this situation before. I have no previous experience. There was no data that was collected before. But yet, I was able to make a proper decision based on my intuition. So how does this model hold?" And to me, that is where the spirit comes in. And for me, at least, the subconscious is the interface between the spirit and the mind. And I will most certainly talk about this in future lectures, but I just wanted to introduce this concept to us because at least my version of health is that we're a physical body, we're a mind, we're an emotional heart, and we're a spirit as well. And those four aspects of who we are have great bearing on our health, our way of life, or on the quality with which we wield that life with. And so I'm just introducing this concept here, guys, but in future lectures, I'll most certainly talk about this in greater detail. So, but for now, we're going to go with conscious and subconscious collecting data, processing data in order to give that intuition. So that's part one of today's talk, exactly how I define it and what exactly it's about. At least my sort of black and white definition of it. Well, not so much black and white, black, blue, purple, and green definition of it. So how does intuition present physically? How? And to me, after spending a lot of time trying to come up with the right word for exactly what the intuition is on a practical level, the best word I could use to describe it, the intuition to me is a nudge. It's a nudge to or away from something, someone, somewhere. That is the best way I can describe it. So for instance, in Trinidad, we have this saying that my blood didn't take that person. And that happens sometimes where we meet someone for the first time and you shake hands and you exchange pleasantries, but you walk away feeling not too good about the person. And that is a nudge away from someone. Versus the opposite to that saying is my blood really took that person. It's a nudge to that person. And so, for me at least, the intuition is a nudge away and a nudge from. Sometimes we might have multiple routes with which we can use to get home or to get somewhere. And when faced with that junction, do I take route A or route B? And just intuitively, we choose one. Now, sometimes, obviously, if there's traffic on one, we may go with the other. But if there's no hard data to suggest either or, then usually what happens is we take a very small but significant step backwards, and we allow our intuition to choose A or B. It's almost like you flip a coin. Or, for instance, I do this with my kids actually, to be able to help them to, well, I guess I'm jumping the gun here, but how to develop the intuition. I play rock, paper, scissors with my kids. And that helps them to develop their intuition. And what I tell them is, think about what I am going to come with, and then play the one that will defeat it, essentially. And so, it's not so much think, but I tell them rather feel. What do you feel I'm going to come with? And then play one to defeat it, essentially. And that to me is a silly, simple game. But what it does, it helps my children to quiet their mind and go with that feeling. Because intuition doesn't come from here. At least just to me, my personal experience, intuition comes from here. Is that nudge. So, rock, paper, scissors, there's a nudge that happens. He's going to come with paper. Let me go with scissors. And that's how I'm starting a process with them on how to develop their intuition. And this has happened to me many, many times. Where sometimes I remember a time that I was home once just relaxing on a Sunday evening, and for some reason I was suddenly seized by this nudge to go to Price Mart. That's a sort of like a Costco, a sort of warehouse shopping area, and I just went for no reason at all. I made an excuse to my wife that, I think we have to go to get some toilet paper, whatever, and I just went ahead. And I went to Price Mart, and I met someone there who, it's been a long time since I would have seen that person, and that meeting actually bore a lot of good fruit. It was quite fortuitous for me to meet that person there. It was the right time and place for me to meet that person. And so, again, it's just a nudge to or away from. So, the question now is, let's dive properly deep into how to develop our intuition. And for me, one of the ways to do it, one of the prerequisites, one of the qualities that we must have to be able to wield and to develop our intuition, and I'll write it in purple because it's important, we have to be quiet. We have to be mentally and emotionally quiet. That's why, take a deep breath, rock, paper, scissors. Because in doing this, you're not thinking about lunch. Whilst me and my kids are playing this game, my kids aren't thinking about TV, they're not thinking about schoolwork. They're in the moment, and they're ready to go. So they're mentally and emotionally quiet, and they're just trying to feed off what it is I'm giving them, sort of non-verbally, to be able to come up with the right one. So we have to be quiet. But adults, in the game of life, is not that simple. And so for me at least, one of the ways in which I help to quiet my mind is the act of meditation. And I did a video on how to meditate for busy people, and I'll link it at the end of this video so you can totally check it out. Meditation helps to quiet the mind, and in those moments, sometimes you get ideas and concepts and clarity just bubbling up from the depths of our subconscious when essentially we give it time. And because it's a nudge, as I put it, it's actually, you know what, I'll qualify this by saying it's a gentle nudge. So much so that if we're not mentally, emotionally quiet, we will miss it. It's more of a, hey, go here, hey, go there. Less of a sharp nudge, so to speak. So meditation will help us to get into a quiet zone. And again, I always like to give practical, real-life applications. So one of the ways in which at least for me in the earlies, how I developed my own intuition, I call it the pineapple test. Where when I went to the market and I had to buy pineapples, it was a big spread. The vendor had about 50 pineapples on the table. And ideally, if I use my conscious mind and gather data, I would look at which pineapple was the biggest, which was the ripest looking, which one had the least blemishes. And so I would have collected data and made the best informed decision on which pineapple to choose. But because I was yet to develop my intuition, what I would do is I would stop, take a look at the table in its entirety, and almost, again, try my best to quiet my mind down, take a deep breath in, and feel from here which pineapple I got nudged away from and which pineapple I got nudged to. What I would do to narrow it down, again, this is just what I used to do, I would divide the table into quadrants, into 4 quarters. And okay, so how do I feel about the top left quadrant? I don't really feel there. Top right, I felt nudged away from that. But for some reason, the bottom right quadrant was a winner. So let me now zone in there. And then from those 5 or 10 pineapples, I'm like, I would just, this one. I would just rest my hand, take my hand and just rest it. This one I got nudged to. I'll take this one. And it might have a blemish. It mightn't be the prettiest looking pineapple. But more than 50% of the times, it was the perfect pineapple. And I just using pineapple as an example. You can most certainly do this with any sort of produce. And produce is because we make decisions on produce based on how it looks. But for me, just as an attempt to develop my intuition, I go based on how it feels from here. I won't get it right all the time. Sometimes my wife will look at me and shake her head and laugh because I picked a pineapple that looked terrible, and it was quite terrible when we opened it. And that's okay. Once you're willing to do that and go through that little trauma, that's perfectly fine. Because it was a process of developing my intuition. And truthfully, when I stopped and took a deep breath, and when I made my decision, I always made a mental snapshot about how I felt when I made that decision. And I sort of correlated how I felt with the result, how the pineapple was. So if I felt like a particular way, if I felt really, really good, but then the pineapple was bad, didn't turn out good, I would then reflect on, I wonder what happened, boy. Did I sleep well the night before? Was I upset for something earlier? And I would just do a little introspection to figure out what went wrong. More often than not, there was no concrete answers. But again, that introspection would help to inform my subconscious as well. Make no mistake, guys. Our minds is one of the most powerful quantum computers out there. Our subconscious mind is powerful. And even though it may not make sense to us here consciously, subconsciously for sure, we primed our mind, okay, the next time we go, we won't make that mistake again. And so now, for me at least, I enjoy playing that little game, that little pineapple game. So, at the end of today's lecture, we now have an idea of what at least my idea of the subconscious, of what intuition is, how it presents physically in a real world scenario, and how we can develop it and become a bit more in tune with it. So, if there's any questions or concerns, guys, feel free to shoot me a comment. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I tried to make a really, really difficult concept, plain and simple to understand. Obviously, I could give an entire seminar on the intuition itself, but for me at least, I love first principles. And I feel we could get 95% of the way there on first principles alone, the foundation. And once we have a solid foundation, the what, the how, and the why, then we can get very, very far. So I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I'll catch you guys in the next classroom. Cheers.